This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Chapter 28, Letters, and our symbol is the ruby-hilted dagger, because we got some Fain in this chapter.
We surely do.
Lewis Theron was there. Rand was sure of it, but not a whisper sounded in his head that was not his own. For the rest of the day, he did try to think of other things, useless as they might be. Barrelane was ready to jump out of her skin for the number of times he popped in on her to ask about something she was perfectly capable of handling without him. He was not sure, but he thought she started trying to avoid him. Even Ruark began to look a little hunted after the 10th time Rand cornered him over the Shido. The Shido had not stirred, and the only choices Ruark could see were to leave them in Kingslayer's dagger or dig them out. Herid Fel had wandered off. As Idrian quickly pointed out, he often did, and was nowhere to be found. When Fel became lost in thought, he sometimes lost his way in the city too. Rand shouted at her. Fel was not her fault, not her responsibility, but Rand left her white and trembling. His temper rippled like a line of thunderstorms sweeping in from the horizon. He shouted at Milan and Marengil till they shook in their boots and left him with pasty faces, reduced Coliver to incoherent tears, and actually sent Anaiella running with her skirts hiked to her knees. For that matter, when Sorelia came to ask him what he had told the Aes Sedai, he shouted at them as well. From the look on Sorelia's face as they stalked away, he suspected that might have been the first time anyone had ever raised a voice to her. It was knowing that Lewis Theron was really there, more than a voice, a man hiding inside his head.
Hate to break it to you, Rand.
I hate to break it to you. Your knowing is wrong. And again, it's the unreliable narrator, where of course he's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It's what, I believe for the longest time as well as a lot of people, but unreliable narrator, that'll get you. Right.
Now, and I'm glad that I'm convinced people, but I think there are people out there who still agree with Rand that LTT is a real person, and I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, Rand just tells you over and over again that it's real, so a less analytical reading, you can take that on board. And certainly my first few reads were just going along for the ride instead of really digging in, so this is great, yeah.
That's actually, I really like the way you put that, my first, because I feel like I did do a lot of going along for the ride the first many, many, many times I read Wheel of Time. I just kind of accepted what the characters told me, and that left me very confused about what was actually going on.
Yeah, it does, and it, in a lot of ways that kind of demonstrates the brilliance of the way it was written in a kind of a frustrating way. Yeah, I was confused a lot in my first read through, and even the subsequent audiobook listens through. And I mean, part of that as well is that it's just so easy to be swept away with Michael Kramer and Kate Redding reading it,
Totally.
They're just so good at it.
And one of the things I'm discovering is even on these deep dives, there's a lot of character names here where they're mentioned, these Aiel, these Aes Sedai, especially in these books. There's a lot of Aiel who were only mentioned once and maybe show up one more time.
Absolutely.
But it becomes very easy to lose yourself in the name salad in these chapters where you're getting all... I feel like in books 1 through 5, he did a really good job of not introducing characters that weren't at least significant. You'd have, the skinny innkeeper or, the Aiel maiden or whatever, but he didn't name them. And I feel like in this book, he really stepped up his naming game and was like, well, that's a character, give him a name. And just, stamping names left and right on everybody.
And do you think that was deliberate?
In some ways, yeah, because I think what he's trying to do is hide the resurrection of the Forsaken. He's
yes,
resurrecting and implanting Forsaken among all these characters, and he doesn't want you to be able to pick them out easily. And so he's creating a lot of noise to hide them in.
I think it's deliberate too. And it kind of makes me think of all of those scenes in A Couple and Eye of the World where the timeline's all messed up, but it's on purpose because the characters would be confused. We're sort of experiencing a little bit from their point of view. And yeah, maybe there's a little bit of that happening here too, because the world is getting more complex and more difficult for our core characters. So I think that's part of it.
And I like Nim's idea that, also as he becomes a more important person, he has more people around him. He has to keep, he's no longer just a farmer wandering through a road. He's literally, overseeing nations that have all these layers of bureaucracy and rulers and people who want things from him. And like, yeah, his world is getting more complicated. There are more people around him. And so, of course, our world and our internal picture of the world gets more complicated.
I also kind of thought in that little bit that you just read is sort of foreshadowing Herid Fel's wandering kind of behaviour.
Right.
And like, it sort of is like, well, he's disappeared here. When he disappears later, it's like, well, he does that, as like Adrian just said. It's like, that's just what he does. But then he obviously, at the end of this book, I think it is, actually dies.
Yep.
And so it's like...
So I think it's the last scene in this book, actually.
Yeah. I didn't realise, I was on Encyclopedia What, he's only in this book.
Yep.
And I didn't realise that until today, looking at that.
His bookmark is in a lot more.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So, and he's like, his impact is so disproportionate to his actual appearances. He's in like 2 or 3 scenes when we actually see him, but he has this massive
right, and he's only
impact.
got dialogue in one of them.
Yeah, that's it.
Like one of the scenes, he's just dancing
Yeah.
with younger women. It's sort of feel like, oh, this scholarly nerdy Herid Fel who's so like in his own head, he wanders off. He's such a brown, and then the next time you see him, he's dancing with 3 girls who could be his daughters. And you're like, nice.
Yeah, and then the like,
nice.
Send Min away. She's too pretty, sort of thing. It's like,
right.
He's very Andoran right now.
He's a bit of a flirt. Even with being a bit of a bookish nerd, he's also, like, kind of got game.
Well, I feel like that scene probably had a lot of alcohol.
Well, and it was the...
That was a festival, right?
Festival of the Birds Festival, whichever one where, like, the Kyrianan just go nuts that one day. Yeah. But that's the one where, like, they break down the caste system for a day, and nobles and common folk can just like make out, and like they go crazy. So maybe not so much his personality as the holiday, but yeah, it feels out of character because you're like, wait a second. But yeah, no. So I didn't realize he's only in this book, and we get all the information pretty, in a relatively short time period. I wonder what Rand wanted to talk to him about. Probably just more of the same theories, I suppose. Yeah, he's got nothing to do, so he's trying to find someone to kill time with. And he's like, well, a great way to do that is sit down with a scholar and talk philosophy about what the Dragon Reborn. And he likes Herid Fel, just as a friend. Yeah,
and a fellow Andoran as well, with him, the 3 of them, Min, Herid, and Rand would have been maybe a little bit of home as well, in one sense, but yeah. And my overall observations of Rand in this whole beginning scene is, like, he's just such an angry person, like, and this is almost like a lesson in not processing emotions like a responsible adult, dude. It's like, feel your feelings. Otherwise, you take it out of people and make, wannabe queens cry. The poor, I don't have a lot of sympathy for Colivert, but seriously, like...
no,
it's not a very nice person in this period.
No, he's not.
He's
terrible to everybody around him.
He's awful.
Gets his reputation for a temper. Think about being an Andor, man. You've got between Rand and his temper, and then Elaine being pregnant and her temper. It's got to be like, man, walking on eggshells in this place. Everybody's angry all the time. Mistress Harfor is a saint. Yes.
Well, I was about to say, we're going to meet up with Mistress Harfor again in a minute, and I feel like she's just like the rudder. The rudder on the ship a little bit. Like,
right.
I think when we first meet her again, or Rand for the first time, it's like, he got the sense that she was keeping the palace well, like, for her own pride and, like, for the pride of the country, instead of, like, she couldn't care less who was on the throne, basically, except she's in Elaine's camp. We know that. But, like, she takes the job very seriously, and she's a rudder on the ship, so I have a lot of respect for her.
Her and Master Nori are the 2 who are holding the city together. Yeah.
They're the real administrators behind the scenes, which I can relate to with my work a little bit. Then he leaves, right? So he's in Kyrian at the beginning, here. The next thing I have is heading back to Camelin.
he talks about no more running. He's like, oh man, I've been having these nightmares about running. Am I running from Forsaken? And he's like, nope, running from women. Figures.
Yes. Yeah, and you made that
yeah,
point
he
earlier.
has that realization. Yeah. He right before he goes through the gateway, he gets a letter from the Sea Folk.
Yes.
In Cairhien. And right before he came to Cairhien, the Sea Folk in Camelin, he actually had a meeting with them and slipped out of that meeting at the last minute to gateway away because of his whole guilt because of Aviendha, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and then he runs right back to her.
Right, well, because he ended up in Camelin where he got bonded by Alana. And then he ran back to Cairhien. Anyway, he's been bouncing back and forth.
Yes.
I'm getting the exact timeline confused
Just
between
being-
Cairhien.
Just being reactive.
As Elaine says, he was there twice in the last... He was in Cairhien twice in the last 10 days.
Egwene said that, yeah.
Yeah, which means he was in Camelin 3 times, basically.
Yeah, and she's like, I wonder how he does that. And then they, as we were saying, talk about the travelling, and she's like, oh, that's interesting. That could be useful. And then, so he gets the letter and then leaves.
Right. Mm-hmm. And when he gets back, he looks up and sees those queens, and he's like, they don't bother me at all. Nope, just pictures in colored glass. Because that's what he fled from, right? Because he thought that they were... Right. He learned that he was, quote-unquote, related to Elaine. And he was like, fled because he thought incest might be a problem. So now he's figured out that that's not going on anymore. And he's like, okay, they don't bother me. They're not judging me anymore.
And I kind of like that they come back as a kind of a theme or something like that, because like Elaine refers to them all the time when she's back in the palace, wanting to live up to, their legacy. So it's kind of a thing that they share, I think is what I'm saying. They both are kind of noting the weight of what it means to be in charge of Camelin as personified by these stained glass pictures.
It's a bit of a Rorschach test. Like when you sit in that chair, you look up and you see, is the throne comfortable? Are the women judging you? Like the whole thing is designed a little bit to sort of focus this sort of judgment on the queen. The other queen's looking down at you. Yeah.
Maybe in some ways it's a little bit like deliberately uncomfortable like that, like the Crown of Swords itself. You're not meant to feel comfortable. You're supposed to feel a little bit on the edge.
Should wear this crown easy. Yeah.
Makes me think about that, which is obviously like another kingdom sort of tie-in. So, and then Aviendha, he must have scared out of her skin, and she's just like ready to just cut whoever would have walked in, not caring that she's naked. And then when she sees that it's Rand, she's like, fuck. And like slinks back, and then they don't talk about it.
Nope. Well, I think that there's a good point here, is she might think it funny to undress for bed in front of him. I don't think she thinks it's funny. She just doesn't see that as a big deal, right? That's just like practical, like being in the sweat tents, right? Like, of course, men and women see each other naked. Like that just happens.
He interprets it as she's twisting the knife, but she doesn't even think about it because it's normal. It's
entirely normal for her.
But this is somehow different.
Well, because this looks like teasing. This looks like that sort of like, because remember the advice they give to Rand when they're like, you need to seduce her. It's like, appear naked and let her see you, and then act flustered. Okay. And that's exactly what she's doing.
That makes more sense now. Yep.
But I don't think she's doing it on purpose.
No.
So, which is why I think she's so embarrassed, because it looks like flirting to all of the maidens around her. And yet she still does kind of like him. Yeah,
I mean, they've got a whole complex thing still going on that they're not talking about. And this whole chapter, though, is like Aiel culture. It's the whole thing's like...
Yes.
Their Jiito and him just really not getting it at all. So we can get into that, but it starts with this, and she just, I will never understand Aiel, Rand muttered. Kind of sums it up.
It's not Aiel you cannot understand, but women. No man has ever understood women. Gotta agree with that one. I don't understand women.
I mean, you just gotta, just gotta talk. That's
communication.
Yeah, that little
I don't
thing.
know. That seems hard. Yeah.
It is hard. Yeah, I know.
I think I'm gonna pass. Can we just skip the communication thing? I think I'm good. Otherwise, these books would be way too short. I mean, really, the entire last 6 chapters is because Rand is running away from his problems rather than communicating with people. He just keeps running back away from them.
Yeah, because men, on the other hand, are very simple. Nandera looks ready to laugh out loud.
Right, because she's this how old do you think she is? 16, 17, maybe?
Yeah, I think she
Being
might have joined...
man or soup or simple?
Yeah, I know. She's obviously just, posturing a lot with her older sisters, society sisters, and, yeah, I think she's, 16 here. She probably joined the Maidens when she was, 14 and a half, 15 years old. You know what I mean? So she thinks she really, gets it, but she's still a kid, so...
Yeah, she got the baby fat still on her cheeks and everything. And this is
definitely.
Everyone looks at her, it's oh, you know men, do you? With your grand experience of one maybe boyfriend,
Right, exactly. Have you even played Maiden's Kiss? Come on. Would she be allowed to?
I mean, she's a maiden.
Oh, man. She might be the most enthusiastic. She would have the most to prove. In their society. It's a very shame-based culture, obviously, so... Anyway, it's a funny moment.
I wouldn't mind playing Maiden's Kiss. I'd get nicked more when I was shaving.
Just channel a bit of that matte energy,
Right, no.
Going into
I'm pretty sure I just get my throat cut.
Yeah, that might be a thing. Yeah. Oh gosh, tangent. This makes me think of what a IEL bachelor party would look like. Just a bit of Maiden's Kiss. Yeah, spin the knife. And then never talk about it afterwards.
What's 7 minutes in heaven would have to be 7 minutes with a deadly salamander in a closet.
Yeah, I mean, is it even an IEL ceremony if you don't have risk of dying?
Right, no, definitely not.
No, you have to. Gotta keep it interesting. Through risk of death, always. But, and then...
Pin the red adder on the donkey, I guess? I don't know, I'm just trying to think of a dangerous snake.
They had donkeys and stuff in the West? Or
yeah.
asses? Or
the red adder is that snake.
Mm-hmm.
What would you pin the snake to?
Somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's the game, I don't know. But yeah, I can only imagine how much is off screen or that type of thing within the warrior societies. But their equivalents, yeah, I bet it's all over the shop.
Because you think the societies are basically sororities and fraternities?
I feel we've got an element of that to them, particularly when someone joins. It's got to be a mildly harrowing experience, yeah. Because, you need to prove yourself.
Sure. And death is a big part of their life, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is not a gentle society. There's a good chance you are going to die with this group of people. They get in battles all the time. They go on raids. And the Waste is a dangerous place. And
you need to know that you can trust each other, and kind of it's a bonding thing. I think that's what hazing is. If it's good for anything, it's a bonding thing.
Right, you go through shit together.
Societies. Yeah. So it's
it's just artificial shit.
Yeah, like a trauma bond.
Manufactured trauma to create that bond.
Yeah, except probably in the Waste, a lot of it would be more
not manufactured, right?
More real or whatever. So yeah. And speaking of trauma, then we've also got a death. Lewis Theron whispered.
Death, Lewis Theron whispered. Rand forgot everything else. Death? What do you mean? Death comes. What kind of death? Rand demanded. What are you talking about? Who are you? Where am I?
Mm-hmm.
Rand felt as though a fist had clutched his throat. He had been sure, but this was the first time Lewis Theron had said anything to him. Something clearly and plainly addressed to him. I am Rand al'Thor. You are inside my head. Inside? No, I am myself. I am Lewis Theron Telamon. I am me. The cry faded away into the distance. Come back, Rand shouted. What death? Answer me, burn you. Again, I don't do it justice because Michael Kramer is amazing.
Oh, yeah. I mean...
with that whole quote. But this is him sensing the Gray Man coming.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Death comes.
Totally. Yes. 100% nodding. I did not notice that, but I think you're 100% correct. Definitely.
Because right after this, he smells something off. Where did I see that? There's an unclean... Oh, where did he say that? Give me just a second. Here we go. So, well, you know how went back and he said knowing a dead man inside of him is what was pissing him off? Mm-hmm. It was knowing that the dead man was inside his head. Knowing was one thing, but a dead man inside of him talking of death made him feel unclean, like the faintest brush of taint on sardine. That's not Louis Theron. That is the gray man that he's sensing.
Where does he have that thought? Is that after? That must be after he travels, because that would make sense.
Oh no, this is right. This is right back. This is right after Louis Theron says, "I am me." The next paragraph. Oh. Knowing was one thing, but a dead man inside of him talking of death made him feel unclean, like the faintest brush of taint on sardine.
Yes,
that uncleanness.
Yes,
and then later in the next page, he says, the unclean feeling was still there and stronger. Maybe Louis Theron had come back. No, it's the gray man getting closer. And so we get this constant drumbeat throughout this chapter of this unclean feeling keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger until the gray man comes in through the door.
Yeah, great pickup. That's amazing. And yeah, so that would be the memories or something like that element of his madness alerting him.
I think this
to
is
this,
just the...
Or... Because most people wouldn't tell anything. You know what I mean?
I think channelers have the ability to sense shadow spawn, and I think that's what the unclean feeling is that sense of shadow spawn. And every shadow spawn has a different sort of sense to it, and he doesn't realize it and doesn't make that connection until later. But I think what it is basically, this is the first time he's a warder, if you think about it that way. Like, he just became a warder.
Yes. Yeah. True. That's increased senses from that. Yeah.
And we know warders can sense shadow spawn at a distance. So, I said I should too, but maybe he's got, now that he's both.
Okay. That explains, that answers the question that I had around, like, why him? Where is that sense coming from? Because obviously, like, in a little bit, he actually can force himself to see the solace. And
it helps when he's holding Sidene. We see that when he's holding the power, it sort of breaks that gray man invisibility, whatever you want to call it, not seeingness.
I guess there's a couple of things going on that make Rand just unique. And while we don't really see any other characters being able to do this, is obviously like Louis Theron tells him here that something's happening. Presumably this is the madness because it's the voice. The Louis Theron as opposed to the LTT, and then he's a channeler, he's got Sidene, and he's a warder, right? So there's like heaps of things kind of converging to kind of make him unique. Yeah, I mean that's the way I'm going to justify it.
Me too. And Perrin actually escapes Grey Man because he's able to smell them coming. He smells that sort of. So there's this sort of a similar.
Yes, which is also kind of a very unique talent.
Right.
Yeah, that explains a lot more about what happens later in the chapter.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite. I really like the way he sets up his gray men, because I think I've said this before, but he does such a good job of misdirecting you, because even here, knowing the gray men were coming and looking for it, I missed the door opening.
Yeah, right.
When the gray man comes in. He just weaves it into a paragraph, so I had to go back and reread that paragraph 3 times before I found the line that I knew was in there. That's how well he actually hides the gray man in the text itself.
Yeah.
Which I always think is brilliant.
We can read it when we get to it, but yeah, I just flicked forward to see, and you're absolutely right. It's just brilliant. Because it's very much like, don't look over here, look over here. It's like what I was saying before about, like, this be on the surface about Aiel pride and Jito and stuff. That's what he wants you to look at. But meanwhile, this other stuff's going on.
Well, I opened tonight with talking about James Randi, the magician who misdirected our attention, and here we see that again.
Exactly. But the next thing that I had is that it's kind of a minor thing most likely, but the symbol on the seal he opens when he opens the letters. Like what?
I did a ton of research trying to figure out what the hell that was, and I have no idea. The description is And this is on both seals, so both wave mistresses have the same symbol on their seal. Mm-hmm. Two things like flattened bowls with a thick, ornate line running from one through the other. I have no idea what that is. And I would love some feedback on that. Is it supposed to be a sail? Is it supposed to be an earring to a nose ring? Is it supposed to be an Adom? Is it supposed to be a oar? Like, I came up with all these options and nothing fits.
Maybe it is to do with the two rings, the earring and nose ring, and whatever that symbolizes.
Or the bowl of the winds.
That's the other thing, but that would be one bowl, not two, right? And there's both, the seal is made of two bowls that are connected. He's obviously just interpreting it like a bowl, but bowl of the winds would be the obvious answer. That
right.
Plus something else. Yeah.
The only thing I think of is maybe one's a bowl that's not being channeled into and one's a bowl that is being channeled into, and that's what the ornate line is.
Yeah.
But I did a lot of research when I read this, and I honestly have no idea what the Wave Mistress seal is supposed to be. So I'd love to hear theories.
Yeah, I mean, my best theory is that it's the ring, the nose to the earring, as a status symbol. That's my front runner right now, but we might.
It was one of the options I thought about. Yeah, but I really the thing is a flattened bowl. Like, it's not a flattened circle. It's a flattened bowl.
Well, that is the only thing that I'm like. But I suppose when you look at a bowl from the top down view, you'd kind of have two kind of concentric circles close together. That could look like a bowl or a ring or a number of different things. So I wonder why he said bowl.
And what really makes me think is the bowl of the winds is described as a flattened sort of wide bowl.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So like the shape really fits.
Yeah,
so.
And he doesn't have any idea about the bowl of the winds at this point.
No, none whatsoever.
That's interesting. So yeah, I mean they're the two theories I suppose that we're going to go with for now. But and then they're in green and blue, which I suppose just signifies the boat maybe, or the rank.
Yeah, just the specific wave mistress.
Because I think Zyda is more highly ranked, I think, at this point, or she will be soon. And she has the blue one. So anyway, if anybody else has other ideas.
I also thought that was just personal preference. Just blue and
be.
green because they like those colors.
Could be. They're a very codified society though, so I wouldn't be surprised if it did mean something.
That is true. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, totally.
And but we get handed those letters, or that second letter, by Harfor. Ms. Reen Harfor.
And both of these wave mistresses are pretty pissed.
Yeah.
The light willing, and this is kind of what the letters in the title of the chapter refer to. The light willing, you will perhaps return to Camelin eventually, as I have traveled far to see you. Perhaps I will find time for it when you do. Zaidine Din Peri Blackwing.
Yeah. And
then you've got, if it pleases the light, I will receive you on the deck of White Spray at your earliest convenience. Hareen de Tugan to Winds of Clan Shodin.
So I've got a pun. This is salty as fuck.
All right, that made me choke a little bit.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
It is. That was my
I
first
literally
thought.
did a spit take on that one. Yeah, that's very salty.
And you had warning.
I did.
They're so salty.
They're so salty.
And it's, I mean, fair enough.
They have every right to be salty. They've been sprayed with disrespect of God, I don't know.
From this like presumptuous land dweller who just doesn't. I mean, he says that we talked about a little bit about this already, but like he's claiming to have done a little bit of research and he can't find any connection. But I mean, when you think about it, if the sea folk, the nature of their society probably means that it's an oral tradition culture, right? So they wouldn't have stuff written down in the same way as the Corethian cycle. So it wouldn't necessarily be anything for him to read to link the Kurumul to the prophecies, you know what I mean?
And it seems pretty ridiculous to think that if he's going to break the entire world, there's only one prophecy about him, right? Like, just the Corinthian cycle? No other peoples have any sort of prophecies? Maybe this Cormor might be you. Maybe you should learn about what their prophecies mean, and then, like, use those as well as the Corinthian cycle to guide your decisions, not just a single prophecy.
Yeah, and, like, you know, chat to them and find out what's going on if they clearly want to talk to you.
And they want to help. Like, that's the thing, is, like, they're there to literally do stuff for him.
I know. And he says, we think neither of these seafolk women sounded like anybody he wanted to spend an hour with. Okay, calm down. Yeah, and then the bit about, you know, not seeing anything in the prophecies, but yeah. Like, the Corinthian cycle is focused on the wetlands, right? And the Aiel prophecy is focused on them, and, you know, this one's focused on this other group. So, you know, but as you say, like, wouldn't it make sense to look at that holistically instead? But he just chooses to say, not right now.
Yeah, he wants to spare them. He thinks he can spare them from the fate that everybody else is going to go suffer. And it's like, no, you can't. You can't leave them out. Just because you don't have a prophecy saying they're going to be involved doesn't mean they're going to be involved. It doesn't mean they're not going to be involved.
Exactly. And even kind of thinks, like, he can fob them off on Bashir. He certainly had enough titles to flatter anybody's vanity. And he's like, and when he says
not going to work.
Nah, not the right title that they're looking for. And he says to Avienda that, no, I don't think it's bad news, but it is. He's just making the situation worse for when he eventually does have that conversation and make the deal. So
yeah, I mean, it's not bad news. It's like they literally want to meet with him so they can serve him. Like, they're one of the few people that come to him entirely. Like, he's just complaining about how none of these countries come to him willingly.
Right.
And here are the sea folk coming to him willingly, and he's like, I don't want you. You know, it's... God, it makes me want to slap him and be like...
Yeah. I suppose it's not, like, bad news, but it's also, like, you know, not great.
Another
because he's not really...
Yeah, it's not the
He's ignoring the problem and hoping that's going to go away. And then we get letter number 3. The servant sank to her knees before him. White head bowed low, and hands raised high to proffer yet another letter, this one on thick parchment. The posture itself made him blink. Even in Tyr, he had never seen a servant cringe so, much less in Andor. Sulin? He gasped.
Right, she's the servant who brings him the letter.
Yeah.
And he's like, wait. And we talked a little bit about this, but this is she addressed Guy Shine as maidens with hand talk, and that shames her.
And this whole bit kind of, I mean, it had this introduction, and it's already like, something's different going on here, which is why I wanted to read that little bit, but it just reads like a comedy of errors between Rand just, like, not understanding what's going on. And I know you guys have been alluding to this bit for a long time, of, like, Sulin as a servant.
Yeah. Well, and I love his ability to... here he figures out anything he did to lighten her burden would interfere with her honor, her toe, her choice. There was something in that, but he could not see what. And later, he doesn't figure it out here, but later he figures out if he shames her even more by giving her what he considers safer, but she considers more demeaning work, he can actually, like, shame her into giving up this earlier and keep her safe. But basically, he's like, all I have to do is shame her even more.
Yeah,
and I like that he figures out that, like, yeah, it's a little fucked up.
It works, though, obviously. It gets...
For his priorities.
Yes. It works in the end. And there was something that I wanted to pick out here, was Jelani's boast and Nandera's reply.
Yeah.
Is that on this
That's on the page before that.
as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. She goes, I, Jelani says stoutly, would rather be beaten by a first brother of my worst enemy in front of my mother every day for a year. It's like, those are individually really bad things. And I just think it gives you, like, a really interesting and rare insight into Je'eto. And that, and also the way Nandera replies. The fact that she doesn't use hand talk. And she says, you boast like a Shido girl. And that's obviously
the 3
like...
calculated insults.
Yes. There's 3 things there.
What are the 3 insults?
Boast, Shido, and girl, right?
Right.
Like, you're being a kid. You're being, like, wow, evil clan, and, you know, boastings. Nobody likes a boaster. Even though...
And then he calls her girl.
Yes.
Yeah. Instead of sister or whatever.
And yeah, and the fact that you said it out loud so everybody could hear it instead
Totally.
of being private.
Totally.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought that was kind of a little like insight into how they think a little bit.
It's also such a good insult. It's like
Oh,
4
yeah.
words and 3 insults. Like
Yeah. The only
6
work,
words. 6 words and 3 insults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which only work if you're so entrenched in the culture. But like Rand's sitting there going,
Totally.
scrubbing his fingers through his hair going, what?
Well, and this is the thing, like, yeah, I don't understand. Why is she doing this?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I think Rand kind of gets the insults, though.
Yeah, maybe the insults. And he just did not commenting on it. But I thought it was funny.
He doesn't get why Sulin's being a servant.
And I thought it was really funny that he assumed that she went and got married.
Oh, right.
And I was like, what the fuck? Like, no, Rand. Why would that be the first thing to come to your mind? I mean,
Right.
maybe, you still
And
got
then he thinks she,
Avienda
like,
on the
needs
brain.
money. Right, well. No, I like that he's got Avienda on the brain, so he thinks, like, oh, marriage. Yeah.
He absolutely should have known better and understood what was going on much sooner, which he does get it eventually, but... And Sulin meeting
Yeah,
her
tries to
toe.
take responsibility for it.
Yeah. Like, he does it, like, twice, though. And meanwhile, Avienda just standing there, like, looking more and more like a boiling kettle, like, you're shaming me so much in so many
Right.
ways right now. And she tells him at the end, but he doesn't even listen.
He tries to take credit for he's like, it's my fault. And the funny thing is Nendera immediately blames Avienda for Rand not understanding.
Yes.
He's like, it's your job to teach him to not be an idiot. And he's being an idiot.
Exactly.
You can't take someone else's Jito.
No, and you need to acknowledge it yourself. And I think there's a moment in a little bit where if you ask, that's even worse. Because, like, if you know, you know. And if you don't know...
Right, if you have to ask, that's
Yeah.
embarrassing.
Exactly.
Someone has to tell you you're being boorish.
Yeah, exactly. And then he kind of, like, has this big sort of internal monologue about his understanding of how Jieto works and the maidens and the different societies. And so, like, do you have any thoughts on the other 8 of the 9 societies who are more sensitive to that faux pas around reminding Gaishan that they're Gaishan or what they used to be? Thought I'd throw that out there.
I didn't have a lot in this section.
Yeah, okay. Because...
Except for the eyebrow comment.
yeah, I noticed that too.
So, the reason she blames Avienda for not teaching him well enough is that she's daydreaming about his eyebrows. So here's my question.
Go ahead.
Do you actually, like, see guys' eyebrows and find them attractive, or is that
No, it's not a thing.
not a thing?
I can just speak for myself, but, like...
Okay.
Maybe some people...
I've always wanted that. Because, alright, here's the thing. I did have someone, when I was a teenager, tell me I had cute eyebrows.
Oh.
So that was, I think they were trying to flirt. And so this has always stuck with me. I was like, are eyebrows like something that people are actively attracted to? Or is that just like a weird compliment that has occurred twice? We also know that like Loyal, his eyebrows are super, what's his, Aerith loves his eyebrows.
That's the other moment. Like, I think it's more of like a whole face thing, right? And then like, if you've got, so maybe some people do. Maybe it's more of an eyebrow person. Some people like eye people.
Some
people are like hair people. I don't know. So
maybe they're eyebrow people.
Yeah. Although maybe it works the other way around too. Because I mean, girls spend a lot of time and money getting their eyebrows right.
Right. So it might be like one of those like subtle things that you don't really think about, but it might make a difference in the long run, right?
Yeah. Actually, I had. It's funny you say that because I actually I went and had mine done the other day, just with henna, because like a thing that I do on the regular at a new place. And the woman, the beautician at the end was like, yeah, like it's actually really important to get it right because, obviously you see your face as a whole, but like it's in the center of your face. So, when you get that right, like it really sets the whole thing. So, I don't know. That was kind of like some armchair psychology from my beautician, but maybe that's what's going on here. And
Maybe.
Yeah. So he's got some...
The eyebrows is a substitute for just having a cute face.
Yeah. Is it Min who talks about his calves? Avienda talks about his eyebrows. What would Elaine's be?
She's like snogging in the corner.
Yeah, yeah, true. So they've all got some little claim on his physique going on. It's just funny.
Right. So this third letter is from Alejandra,
Mm-hmm.
who we later see become one of Perrin's main companions. Like she's one of the three queens.
Totally.
Kind of.
Totally. Yeah.
Berlane, Alejandra, and Fail.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I guess Morghese.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sort of.
Yeah, she ends up in the mix out of her own, out of no intention of her own. But I mean, Rand sort of says afterwards, but like it's pretty obviously about Massima even before you get to that point. Massima and the Dragonsworn, and this basically leads to Perrin's mission, which sets off that whole thing that you just said. So,
right. Alejandra also says a reference that, "Never fear, I know you and acknowledge you, but there are those who would not smile on anyone who approached you save through them."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a reference to Elida's declaration that anyone who approaches the Dragon Reborn has to go through the White Tower. Do you remember that declaration?
I do, yeah.
So
yeah.
I think that's So I think that's what she says, that, I ask nothing save that you hold the confidence in the fires of your heart, burn it. Yeah.
I interpreted that as the Dragonsworn are in her city at this moment, and that maybe I thought she was referring in the first instance to Massima, because I think did we already get the scene where Nynaeve witnesses her meeting Massima and like giving him her rings and stuff?
Yes.
Yeah. So I thought that he was the person that would expect her to go through to access Rand, because he's nuts. But yeah, it could totally be the Tower as well.
Yeah, the phrasing matches the Tower declaration.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Closely. Yeah.
And he kind of like is smiling, reading it, being like, "Oh, cute." She's obviously like being a lot less subtle. Hold on the confidence that hold confidence is in the fires of your heart. Yes, I'll burn the letter.
Yeah, don't worry.
Again, it kind of shows how he's developed a sense of the game of houses, and he's looks at this as like a child's play attempt at playing the game, really. So, bit of a smug moment.
I think he's more smug that he actually has someone like being like, "Hey, yeah, I like you, support me, I'll support you." Like that's the first time in his mind that he's had someone come to him openly. Well, maybe not openly, but willingly.
Yeah, and does he think here that... So this is interesting, given the conversation just a second ago about the sea folk. Still, it was the first time any ruler had approached him without his sword at that nation's throat. No, it isn't.
Yeah, except for the sea folk letters you got earlier. You literally got 3 letters today of people wanting to help you.
Yeah. It's just so frustrating to me, and probably a lot of other people, the extent to which he just disregards the sea folk,
Yeah, and we see later he has made a decision to keep them out of it because he's dumb.
Yeah, he's being a woolhead. He's just being a big old woolhead. Maybe he just doesn't see the sea folk as a cohesive, ruling body, because he just hasn't spent the time to try and understand them. You know what I mean?
That makes sense. Yeah, well, I mean, he knows nothing about them. He doesn't even know Wave Mistress is a title. Like he knows nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it takes really Elaine and Nynaeve have to basically recruit them into his. They're the ones who make use of the sea folk, whereas Rand never really does.
Yeah,
even though he could have.
Yeah, I think it's Hareen Din Togara stays in Cairhien, and he goes with Min and the 2 other Aes Sedai, and then he leaves partway through. And I think Zaida Din Pari Blackwing goes down to Abu Dar, and she's the one that Elaine and Nynaeve and Navienda end up speaking with. I think she just gives up on Camelin and goes downriver. I think that's my recollection of that event without looking it up. She does this whole thing, and he's kind of on point with Aleandra's letter, and then he kind of puts his foot in it again by saying that he's going to find Elaine and put her on the throne. It's like, no, that isn't how...
Never a good thing.
That isn't how any of this works, dude. Just stop. So I thought that was...
So I'd love your take. Why is everyone so opposed to him being like, here, I have the throne, Elaine can have it? Why does nobody be like, oh yeah, that's a great choice? It seems to me that everyone should just, like, 100% be behind him on this. I mean, I know Morghese burned a lot of bridges, but, like, wouldn't they rather have Elaine than Rand?
Yeah, no, I don't think that it's lacking for any kind of support of the notion, but I think the problem is caught up in a queen of Andor, which is matriarchal, being handed to her by a man. Like,
Gotcha.
it's in the phrasing and the intent. She's like, excuse me, no, this is my country, I know that I have the best claim, but I will fight for it myself, and I don't need you to give it to me. She's fine with being given Kyrian because that's not her home city or country.
Right.
But it's important to her that she is given it in her own right. I think a lot of that, would have... If she'd been anyone else, say she had been... What's the woman who's trying to make the claims to Rand who was speaking to her in 2 chapters ago? It's an E name, anyway. When she's just trying to always bring the conversation back to, like, my claim to the throne. I think she would have been fine with being put there if he'd given it to her. But I think Elaine was probably concerned that if that was the optics, in the city, that Andorans, being who they are, probably wouldn't have trusted her. You know what I mean? Like, you were given that by the Dragon Reborn. It isn't really yours. As opposed to earning it, owning it, and not having anybody give her shit about it publicly as well as in her own mind. So, yeah, that's what I think. She can do it herself. Don't need no man to give it to her.
Fair enough.
And yeah, that's why I kind of wanted to call it out here when he kind of has a thought like, just gotta find her and put her here. It's like, well, no, she can do it herself. Actually, she doesn't need your help. And then we have that line.
So this is the line that took me forever to find. The door opened gently, and he looked up, but saw nothing and returned to the letter, wondering whether he had dug out everything that was in it. Reading, he rubbed his nose. Lewis there in his talk of death. Rand could still not rid himself of that feel of filth.
Yeah.
And that whole, like, the door opens, and he looks up and sees nothing. That's because the gray man just opened the door and strolled on in. And then... yeah, that filth is just, this is the third time it gets mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know when Robert Jordan repeats something, you gotta start paying attention. Because he does it for a reason, like, 99% of the time. And also, like, at a close reading, you'd be like, the door opened and the maidens didn't do anything? That's strange. And then they just go back outside.
I like what Super Sky says here. We're too busy thinking about the letter, and so is Rand.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's the misdirection. Have you ever seen the video of... It's a psychology video where there's 2 teams playing basketball, and the instruction is count the number of times that the team in the white shirts pass the ball.
Yeah,
they show you the video.
Yeah.
You're very familiar. Yeah.
Yeah.
They show you the video and you count it. And then you watch it again, and they say, okay, now this time, don't count the balls, just watch the video. There's a guy in a gorilla suit that walks through the middle of the game.
Yes. Yeah. I heard the experiment explain pretty much exactly what you said, but at the end of watching the video, they're like, yeah, so count the passes, and then, so they're paying attention to that, and then at the end, one of the questions afterwards is like, so, who noticed the gorilla? And they're like,
I didn't.
What? There wasn't a gorilla. I love that experiment in selective attention and everything that it means for day-to-day life, and then,
and that's what the gray man takes advantage of.
Exactly.
The gray man is the gorilla in that situation.
Yes, exactly. I mean, he also has supernatural heebie-jeebies going on to help him out, but it's a great analogy, I know.
Right, and I think what he's doing is using the supernatural heebie-jeebies to take advantage of that inattention, that selective attention that humans have.
Yes.
It's not that we can't see them, it's just that, like, you really don't pay attention to it unless,
correct,
like, it's really pointed out to you.
Exactly. And then everything happens in, like, a matter of about 15 seconds as soon as he does click as to what's happening. And, and I had the thought as well that the grey man itself must be moving really quickly because, like, Rand describes everything as time slowing down, and then the grey man, like, moves up to him really quickly by comparison. So maybe they've also got some sort of speed thing that kicks in when they get noticed. I don't know. I just thought.
I think I think that because he's using his, like, don't notice me thing, he moves slowly, just not to draw attention. He's like fast-moving things draw attention. True. And the second he gets noticed, he stops going from moving slowly to just moving at, like, an attack speed.
True. Yeah, it moves a bit faster.
And so Rand captures him in a weave of air, and Taim, who comes out of fucking nowhere. What the fuck? Nowhere. Throws fire over Rand's shoulder and kills the Grey Man.
So the first couple of times that I read this through, because of the way that the information is presented, I thought it was Avienda who threw the fireball. Yeah. But then we very soon find out that it was actually Taim.
Because you don't know Taim's in the room when the fire happens.
No. And then, this is an obvious question, who sent it?
Who sent what, the Grey Man?
The Grey Man. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a tough one. But I agree, I think it's Demandred.
Yeah, so do I. It seems like a setup for Taim to kind of save Rand as, like, the obvious interpretation, but because Demandred doesn't actually want him to die.
The only question I had is, it does... Right. My only question is, Taim seems genuinely confused as to who sent the Grey Man. And I'm trying to figure out, how could Taim both be confused as to who sent the Grey Man and be there at exactly the right time?
Well, that's it.
The Grey Man.
The timing is what makes me think that it was a setup. As like a...
Not to mention, Rand doesn't sense a gateway opening.
Yeah, right.
Taim claims that he just opened a gateway right then and there, but, like, you think Rand would have sensed that?
On the balcony, yeah.
On the balcony, right behind him?
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't. He just senses the fire appearing, so...
It's so random. It's so random. And so, like, yeah. There might be other theories. I didn't actually get a chance to look this up. There's probably a debate on the internet about this. I just wonder if we came to a conclusion. But it seems that it was set up by Demandred for Taim to come and save him so that Rand would trust him with the continuing setup of the Black Tower, because that's what Taim supposedly came to talk about was, you should really come down and see the school. Made a lot of changes. There's this new guy.
Right, and Narishma. Like, it seems like such a weak excuse.
Yeah, yep.
Such a weak excuse to show up.
Yeah, and as Skylight sort of pointing out, like, don't think he was actually surprised. I think it was acting, Sorry, what were you saying?
I mean, there is that one line where he says, that had the ring of truth.
The ring of a simple truth.
Yeah.
What does he say immediately before that?
I would give a great deal to be sure that... So, Rand says that man had to come for Samael. Perhaps, Taim said shortly, glancing at the Grey Man. I would give a great deal to be sure. That had the ring of simple truth. So I think we can take Jordan's word that Taim really doesn't know who sent the Grey Man. I don't know why Taim's there then, though. So I'm very confused by this scene. Why is Taim here? Did he really just show up to talk about Narishma? Is he actually confused about the Grey Man?
Yeah, I can see why you'd lean towards that. I just don't trust Taim on anything.
Right.
So, like, you're sort of set up, even at this point as a first-time reader, you kind of set up to think he's kind of gross and untrustworthy for lots of reasons. And so the simple interpretation is that he's lying, and he just got really good at manipulating people, so it sounds like truth, and Rand just really... it could just be Rand on some sort of subconscious level being like, well, I mean, he just saved me, so he's telling the truth. I don't know. It's kind of a convoluted way of justifying it, but... It
feels a lot like, Marilor rescuing Elaine? Like, that whole thing was a Dark Friend setup.
Yeah.
To get him to trust him.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so this feels the same.
Mm-hmm. It does. And the end game being that Rand continues to put his faith in Taim to basically make the Black Tower his own personal army. We know, and we see where that goes in the end.
But I found this whole interaction with Taim to be...
It's weird.
Just a weak interaction. Like, I don't understand Taim's motivation for showing up unless it's just to do the Grey Man thing. But then I don't get his regret over killing the Grey Man. It seems like he would have just been like, yeah, I killed him. I was saving your life.
Yeah. Well,
know?
Rand wanted to interrogate him. I wonder
Right.
how...
Although I'm not sure you can interrogate a Grey
I was
Man.
going to say, it's like, they're basically zombie assassins in universe.
Right, they're already dead.
They're just dead.
Yeah.
So I don't know that he could tell him much anyway. And then, but it's exciting when we hear about Narishma for the first time. That's
He who will follow after.
somehow.
Somehow, for
Not
some
that we know
reason.
how, but that's
Right.
a fourth age problem. I
mean,
suppose.
maybe he's the... I always thought he's the one who's gonna, like, pull the sword out of the stone after.
Yeah.
Right? This is where it comes from, like, the... Pulling the sword out of the stone has incredible significance, and there's only two people that do it, Rand and Narishma.
Yeah, I feel like it's that whole thing alluded to Narishma helping get the sword back, because that obviously, I think Rand carries it again after that moment in book 8, I think. He carries it right to the end, so it's important. It just happened pretty early on in the scheme of things. And we also have the voice of Luz telling Rand to kill Taim. So
Right, which is pretty consistent.
yeah, it is consistent. And, you know, I just figure it's because he recognises that Taim is a threat, which kind of contrasts with this discussion we're having about maybe he did it in order to make him trust him. But meanwhile, Luz Theron's just like, no. You should kill him now.
Yeah, and yeah. I don't think Rand trusts any of the Ashaman.
No,
Taim
I don't think that he does, really.
in particular. I think that's part of why he lets the Black Tower get out of hand, is because he doesn't trust Taim and believes that is somewhat part of his madness, and so ignores it. Even though he legitimately shouldn't be trusting Taim. He thinks, that's just Lewis Theron going off. I need to ignore that and trust him. Because,
exactly. He sort of backfires, basically. And we also have the maidens being abashed that they didn't see the Grey Man, even though Rand points out that it's physically impossible for them to see him, and I liked his solution to it all. Yeah,
one of those places where he does seem to be gathering in some of the lessons that Abdul has taught him, and does seem to be adjusting to being Aiel, right? I
was going to say the same thing, that he...
Right.
Maybe he did pick up something from the previous discussion, after all, and he does kind of get it a little bit. And then they... Grateful.
Great, because he's like, don't tell anybody about this. I don't want anyone to know that I nearly got killed. And they're like, oh good, thank God. We don't want to know someone nearly killed you.
Yeah, because that means that they can't talk about how they felt like they failed as well.
Because, like, they understand it's a magic thing, but at the same time, like, the idea that a man got that close to Rand and they didn't see him is shameful for them.
Yeah, that's right. And then they have Toh to him. And then, I don't know what happens with that in the end.
He saves them from Toh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they just... That's a pretty minor Toh.
It is minor.
You know, yeah.
And that's
he saved them a little bit of embarrassment.
Yeah, that's it. They probably just, like, pulled double shift or something instead of doing anything crazy. And then he thinks of how to solve the Sulin problem, which is what you described before about making her serve him personally. And
I missed that he did that in this chapter.
Yeah.
He figures it out in this chapter?
Yeah. Suddenly, a way to deal with Sulin popped into his head. She would not like it, but it would still be meeting her Toh, maybe the more so because she would not like it. And it would relieve his conscience somewhat, as well. So,
he has her serving him directly because he thinks that's going to shame her even more. But also that gives him the ability to protect her because
keep an eye
she's
out.
under his... Yeah, exactly.
And then we get the Avienda lecture, which he just does not pay any attention to whatsoever because he's looking at her eyes.
Yeah, and I really want to see the change in his face as he goes from basically admiring her eyes to just crushing and, like, a soulless, almost, Lewis Theron Grey Man type stare at her.
Yeah, I know. I can only imagine it went from kind of like a goofy, like, what are you going to tell me now, to, oh man, like, this is great, to, no, it's not great, because I can't do that, because that makes me a bad person for some reason, to, I'm going to keep punishing myself. And so he must have just been like, I don't know, looking really angry because he's angry at himself, and dead in the eyes, probably as well. Or maybe that would have been the phase before, but yeah, I know. Because we just get it through her reaction to him. She trailed off slowly and stood there staring at him, breathing hard. Yeah, not good.
No. And then she leaves, leaving him alone with a dead man, which I love that line, because there are two dead men in that room. The dead man in his head and the dead man on the floor.
Absolutely. The dead, you know, and he's internalizing a lot of that as well, because, you know, exactly with that interaction with Avienda, he's trying to turn himself off and become the stone that Soralia and Katsuane decide they need to soften again, make him human. This is it, happening in real time. It's obviously started a little while ago, but it's like, man, you can't do this to yourself. I feel bad for him in this scene.
His rejection of the women he loves is, you know, part of what makes him hard, part of what makes him Quendiar. Exactly. You know,
it's not good.
He needs to accept the veins of gold before he can become a good person again and not be hard. Because, like, yeah, being hard is not going to save the world.
No. He needs to be a human.
Yeah. And
then we get kind of a gross ending to the chapter.
The Fain. I love Fain POVs. They're some of my favorites.
Ugh. I feel unclean
he's such
reading
a wild
this.
card.
He's disgusting.
Oh, that's what's so good about it. He's disgusting. He's so good. And yeah, I mean, we get the, you know, the basically, random rape because he's evil scene, which people tend to... I feel like in modern fantasy reading, that's really become a bit of a negative trope, where it's like rape as a punishment is...
Exactly. I mean, I had the same thought, like, it's a total trope. Yeah, it's a total trope, but, I mean, it feeds into him as a character in a lot of ways. Like, it's on brand for him. And he's bigger than that trope as well.
Yeah.
But,
well, in a lot of ways, I'd actually disagree with you on that.
Yeah?
I don't think it fits. Fain, to me, is so far beyond sexually evil. Like, at no point do we get any indication that he views humans as Trolloc food. Mm-hmm. He sees them as disposable evil souls. I never see him as a sexual being.
Mm-hmm.
And while, yes, I realize all he's doing is exerting power, there is a little bit of a, like, I just want to relax and have, you know, and fuck somebody.
Right. Yeah.
And that, to me, is out of character for Fain. I see him as not that human.
Yeah. Look, it's a good point. And yeah, the way it's sort of phrased is, think of something else. A pretty woman. How long since he had a woman? So he does imply that it's more about the sexual side of it than just the power, but obviously it is about the power.
Right. And
so I feel like, this is one bit that probably hasn't aged very well as a trope.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other information that we get in this section, though, is around confirmation that the White Cloak attack was directed by him.
Right.
And he notices a weird difference in that Solana. And he's like, got a creepy, sort of psychotic, like, I'm the only one with a claim to Rand al'Thor thing.
Right. Yeah, he gets so angry when he hears about the Grey Man attack that he does one of his little... Basically, he takes his anger and releases it as a magic bundle of hate on the boy, which causes all sorts of...
Horrible.
A bit of something from the Dark One, perhaps. A bit from Eridhall. It had been there after he stopped being just Padden Fain, that the ability began to manifest, slowly. All he knew was that he could do certain things now, as long as he could touch what he worked with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how he controls the Murderall as well.
Yeah, it is. And I kind of thought that maybe foreshadowing's too strong of a word, but kind of alludes to the second wound that Rand receives, the one that he receives by Fain, and the dagger. It's like the kind of his little explanation of how the mechanics of that work, as sort of poorly understood by Fain as it is. It's sort of like, well, it's that stuff that Rand ends up with. Yeah.
Right, that hatred and that, yeah.
So it's important for that reason. Just with the, like, his obsession with Rand thing, it kind of reminds me of that meme. I think it can be like class like that. I don't remember where it came from exactly, but the whole thing where this one person's just like insulting the second person, and second person's like, well, I don't think about you at all. You know what I mean?
Oh,
As like
yeah.
the biggest insult of like, what's that from?
Mad Men.
Yes, Mad Men. Yes, it is. Yeah, I can think of it now. Yeah. It's a Don Draper's like, well, I don't think about you at all. So, you know, and that's like Rand to Fain. It's just like, man.
Exactly. I don't think about you at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas Fain is like obsessed with him all the time. That's all he can think about is trying to get even with him. And he's like, yeah, I don't think about you at all.
And part of that is the touch from the Dio, right? From his when he was sent way back to the
Yes, he was distilled. The part of him was linked to Rand. He could sense him, and that's where we saw that when Alana bonded Rand and took a part of possession of him, that sort of pushed Fain away a little bit, and he notices that he just detects that when Alana bonds Rand.
Yeah.
A couple other things we learned about. I mean, I feel like we learned a lot about Fain here.
Yes.
We learned that he can identify a dark friend just by sight.
Yeah.
There should be nothing to single out a dark friend from anyone else, but of late he found he could tell one at a glance, even someone who'd only thought of swearing to the shadow, as if they had a sooty mark on their forehead. Now, the sooty mark on the forehead, I wanted to match that comment to when Shadar Haran marks... It's Alviarin, thank you, Super Skylake. When he marks Alviarin as his own, and he puts the sooty thumbprint on her forehead that she thinks is visible, but it's not. It is visible to Fain.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a great connection. And
just that mark of the Dark One seems to be that sooty, which also, let's make a connection to Ash Wednesday.
It would, yeah. It would look like that. That's what I'm visualizing. Absolutely. That's exactly the oil and ash creating it's what sticks to the skin for a little bit. Definitely my visual reference for that. And so maybe what Fain's seeing then is like, I want to say like another like, not like a thinning of the pattern, but like he kind of sees the overlay of the world that the Dark One puts on the world. I don't know. I haven't really thought through that mechanic, but like it was something like that maybe. And so that's what Shadar Haran's doing to Alviarin's forehead, is what Fain sees on others, probably coming out of an oath, you know, when they make those oaths to the Dark One.
And Super Skylake brings up the mark of Cain, you know, the 666 thing on the forehead. Like, you are marked of evil. Like, that seems to be a pretty common theme, is the evil mark on the forehead.
Yeah.
Hell, even if you want to make a Stormlight Archive reference, the Shosh brand on Kaladin's forehead.
Yeah, I know. You can't get rid of. Yeah, and this seems a little more sort of that supernatural something happening with the Dark One's touch. I always thought of Kaladin's branding as just being an example of like the worst of humanity, because it's a brand and it's all that political shit going on behind the scenes with all of that. But yeah, I know what you're saying. It's like it's kind of it's something that there's a lot of cultural references for the reader to kind of be like, oh yeah, I can kind of get that.
Totally. Marks on the forehead are a thing.
He probably would have used that ability when he went to... I'm thinking again of his encounter with Rand, where he stabs him. That is with... Who's that with again? I can think of who they are, but...
Ryoton?
Yeah. Well, because Ryoton, he's a dark friend, right?
Yeah. Well, no, he's not a dark friend. He's just influenced by Fain.
Right.
So Fain's been hanging out with him quite a bit. He's in rebellion, and Fain is his advisor, his worm tongue, if you would.
Yeah, and he influences him.
And then later in
Farmadding.
In Farmadding, Fain shows up with Ryoton as one of his thralls, and he has Ryoton attack Lan. And
Yeah. He's not necessarily a dark friend. He's just a thrall by that point. Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the other thing, which you probably have in your notes as well, I think we find out here explicitly that Pedron, Nile, and Elida have been touched by Fain at this point.
Unlikely Nile would have ever supported Althor any more than Elida would have, but it was best not to take too much for granted with Rand bloody Althor. Mm-hmm. Well, he had brushed them both with what he carried from Eridol. They might possibly trust their own mothers, but never Althor now.
Yeah, I think that line's really important when you're kind of thinking about Elida's behaviour in particular, because it could easily be considered like a throwaway line. It's only mentioned once explicitly, But then you kind of like go back to that to understand why she does what she does.
And we've seen him hanging out with those people.
And we've seen that as well.
We've seen...
Yeah.
He spent time with Elida and Fain. Or and Neil.
I guess this just makes it more... like he is aware of it, you know? It's him actually choosing to do it or something like that instead of being like an accidental effect that just happens because they're being around.
Right, and now we know that that's what he was doing with them.
Exactly.
Like, we weren't really sure why he was hanging around them, and now it's like, oh yeah, he was just corrupting them.
He was on purpose.
Totally.
And in his own way, like, just sowing chaos, you know, which is what the Dark One actually wants at this point, is just chaos.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
I like how Rand's in, like, not going to rescue the Two Rivers actually saved the girls who were with Varen and Alana.
Yeah.
Right? Because here, Fain thinks about going and killing them, and he's like, well, if he doesn't care about the Two Rivers, then there's no point in killing just a few girls from the Two Rivers. But if he'd shown any interest to Fain in the Two Rivers, I bet Fain would have gone off and killed everybody. All those, like, Matt's sister, all of them would have died.
There's something a little bit sad in that, because, like, Rand chose to do that cynically. He kind of knew what was happening. He deliberately left his hometown to burn, or potentially be burned. It was fine, and then because Perrin rocked up. But that was like the beginning of him making himself into stone. He was like, I can't care about that. Can't care about this. Which obviously has some benefits, like you're describing, but, you know, ultimately it's not a good thing.
And that's a big part of his whole arc, because in the beginning, what does he say to Tam when he leaves? I'll be back, Dad, as soon as I can.
Yeah.
I promise I'll be back. And then he never, ever gets a chance to return. And this is sort of, he has to distance himself. And it's only once Codswain brings Tam to him that and forces him to confront what he's become that we get Veins of Gold and Rand dealing with LTT and reintegrating that personality into his own.
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of the reason that moment has such a big impact to him. Makes me sad thinking about baby Rand, you know, of the world Rand. He's such a different person.
Although it is funny, I guess we did just see him in the Two Rivers recently, dropping off the Ogier. That was like last chapter.
True. I mean, true.
As close as he gets to home.
But it isn't really, like, it's not Emmons Field, you know? Like, it isn't really...
No. He just drops him off on the outskirts and leaves.
And he does that deliberately. Yeah, that's true. That's as close as he ever gets to going back. I mean, that we know of, maybe when he's, you know, after everything.
Well, let's say the closest he gets to going back in his current body. Right?
Correct.
Like,
yeah.
Moradin might show up there.
Yeah.
Or maybe a tall, dark stranger showing up in the Two Rivers soon. But,
wouldn't that be a trip? He would just go and be anonymous, apple brandy in front of a little fireplace, smoke his pipe.
Right.
And
totally.
They'd be like, hello, traveller, where are you coming from?
Yeah, hello, stranger. And
Wouldn't
I'll
that
be
be...
like, hello, Bran Alvier.
Yeah.
Like, wait, how do you know my name?
Oh, there's so much, that's a whole thing.
He's got some traveling to do before that happens, though. He wants to see the world.
I did love that, like, moment that he has that thought. It was like, I actually want to see the world as an anonymous traveller, because I never really did that without being chased by someone trying to kill me. So, yeah.
I feel like he's had the corporate experience, right? Like, if you've ever been been in an office job where you had to fly to a bunch of cities, but all you ever got to see was the airport, the hotel, and the conference rooms.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, great. I mean, I've been in all these cities, but I've never seen anything but the inside of the hotel, you know. And for Rand, it's like, all he's seen is the inside of the palace and, like, the traveling gateway and, like, a few ceremonies. Like, he's never had a chance to go to the inns or, you know, just explore the culture of the cities.
Yeah, he was always working. He was, like, working 24/7. When you think about it. So, yeah, exactly that. It's, it's funny to think about, what he would have done next. Hopefully he had a good life.
Yeah. Oh, man, can you imagine him and Tam just sitting out on the table and talking? I imagine that he reveals himself to Tam.
He would have disclosed it to Tam, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that...
If not right away, pretty quickly.
Yeah, and the three girls as well, because that's a whole thing with... the babies and, you know, what happens there. But, I know.
Well, the three girls know because they're bonded to him. So they already know, right?
But it's just a matter of...
Nynaeve figures it out. Codswain figures it out.
Uh-huh.
So it's not going to be secret for too long.
I feel like the worst kept secret. Well, I would have liked to think that they would have kept his confidence, at least for a little while, to let him do exactly what he wants to do and travel and stuff.
Do you think... can you imagine him popping up with, like, Perrin and Rand and Matt and just being like, yeah, so I didn't die. And Matt will be like, yeah, me neither.
I'd like to think he would have, like, pranked them and, like, shouted them or, like, joined them and not told them who he was for a little bit and then, like, tricked them somehow and then revealed it. Because that goes back to, like, good-natured, jokey Rand from the beginning.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Village boy Rand.
Yeah. Or, like, told them something about Davale and a sheep from when they were all, like, 12 years old. And they would have been like, what the fuck? How do you know that? Or, you know, something like that. And then to kind of freak them out. And then... But I also feel like at that point, both of those boys would have just been like, I'm so over this magical shenanigans. Like, Perrin just wants to live his damn life.
True.
And Matt just
Matt's got to deal with the whole Sean Jan empire. That's a different thing.
He was going to be on a ship pretty soon, I think, wasn't he? So
he's going to be up to his neck in ship.
A new royal court to not be a lord at.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
I'm no bloody lord, just emperor.
Yeah. Well, that was a really nice palate cleanser for me for that last section with Fain, which is disgusting.
Yeah, I'm just gonna read us out and say it was all Thor's fault. Rape a girl and blame somebody else. Good job, Fain.
Yeah, that's part of the ickiness.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just, it's a rape. It happens. We're not happy about it.
No. Yeah, and like you say, just kind of a trope.
We said everything we need to say about that.
Yeah, we have. Kind of a trope, RJ. Let's just move on with the book.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be in there. It just doesn't have to. Fain is evil enough without rape. Like, and it's not like something he did before. It just feels out of character to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It just feels like he's like, what can I do to make Fain more evil? Oh, I'll have him randomly rape somebody.
Yeah.
Okay.
And implying that he's done it before. And yeah, I mean...
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?